Doctor Who, the story and the engine. Now, I've got to say, first off the bat, I wasn't too sure what I would think of this episode. Going into season 2 of the new Disney Plus era of Doctor Who, I've had mixed thoughts on some of the episodes, and the general line of things is that honestly, some of these episodes I've not really enjoyed very much. For example, episode 1, Robot Revolution, was not a big fan of that, and after a second watch, which it was a little bit, it wasn't the funnest rewatch, I'm not gonna lie, but after rewatching it, you can pick out so many plot holes. Then we had Lux, episode 2, which in my opinion was a improvement. I enjoyed this episode more than the first episode, but it still had all of them underlying issues in it. And again, plenty of poor writing choices. Then we had episode 3, The Well, and this episode absolutely is literally my favourite Ncuti Gatwa episode ever, like throughout this entire new era of Doctor Who. It even rivals some of the 60th anniversary specials for me, so a really real solid episode of the series. Of course there are a couple of nitpicks with it, but overall I think it's a solid episode. Then we had episode 4, which I genuinely was so unmemorable to me that I can't even remember the name of the episode, which says a lot really. But yeah, episode 4, again, in a very similar sense to the Robot Revolution, was not a great episode for me. There was a lot of people raved about it and said it was like a really good episode, but in my opinion I just think that it was a really bold message that was very one-sided, and this message was just not even mixed into the story that well. It was just like, here is this message, we're going to wrap a story around it, and that's the episode. So that was episode 4, and yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I left episode 4 and I was like, okay, well we've had one really good standout episode this season. It doesn't really feel that much like Doctor Who. There's like key elements, for example, like the Doctor, he doesn't even possess some of the main traits of the character. He's so easily willing to let people die and even mock death throughout this new season, which is just so the opposite to what the Doctor's character is, to the point where it just doesn't feel like the Doctor. And inherently that also means that Doctor Who isn't feeling fully like Doctor Who, and it's been a little hard to get some belief going throughout and some real faith in this series that it's gonna be good. Then I watched the story and the engine today, and I've got to say, this was a solid episode. First of all, which is always a good thing, there were a couple of little political points, similar to how they used to throw in political points back in the OG era of Doctor Who, as in like the Christopher Eccleston to Peter Capaldi era of Doctor Who, even the Jodie Whittaker era really. But yeah, that whole era of Doctor Who, they did throw a couple of little pieces in, but it was done very tastefully and written very well into the episode. So, I mean, that's one thing that I've got to say, like, I don't mind them throwing in little political pieces that fit well within the episode and that actually make sense to actually be in the episode if they're actually like well written into the episode. Like, that's why it works so well back in the Christopher Eccleston era and even the David Tennant era, Matt Smith era, Capaldi era. Them eras work so well because they didn't, first of all, they didn't have some like big message to push in every single episode, and then second of all, when they did have a message or like a life lesson or that kind of thing, they put it in an episode, and the episode wasn't built around the message. The episode incorporated the message into it. So it wasn't like a case of how we got nowadays. We have an episode that was literally message, episode around it. And that just isn't a good way to write television. And it also makes the episode really, really boring. But this episode, the story and the engine, I thought it was a fun episode. And I've got to admit, the first half of the episode was a little bit slow. And I was like, this episode's kind of mid. It's alright. But then that second half, I think that really, really did pull it back for me, in my opinion. And I thought that second half really, really saved this episode, and it did also just take it up a notch to that next level of the episode, to the point where I'd say that this is actually my second favourite episode of the entire season. And probably, again, I'll put it up there with some of my favourite episodes of the Ncuti Gatwa era. So, yeah, definitely a good episode overall. Of course, as always, I am going to be doing a full, in-depth breakdown and review of this episode coming very, very soon. I'm currently working on the one for the well, and then I'm going to do the one for the next episode straight afterwards. So, you've got that to look forward to as well. A lot of new content. I've released the one for the Robot Revolution, but these videos, and also Lux, sorry. But yeah, these videos are just so time consuming to make. Like, first of all, because we're doing them very, very differently, I've got to rewatch the episode and then screenshot clips from the episode, well, screenshot different points from the episode, and also write like a bit of a script, a rough script, on the actual episode. So that obviously takes a few hours to actually do. And then I've got to film it, which takes roughly about 2 hours, two and a half hours, maybe even 3 hours sometimes. And then I've got to cut it down and edit it. So I edit about an hour to 2 hours of footage out of that, or just dead space, etc. And it becomes just over an hour long review of the episode. So they do take just a long time to edit and make. So that is why there is just this delay on these specific episodes. But yeah, I genuinely thought this episode was a good episode. It felt very, very Doctor Who-like, and I've got to praise everybody involved with this. I think the Doctor, like Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, his performance can be a little underwhelming sometimes. I think in some scenes he could have gone a bit harder and been a bit more Doctor-like in some scenes. But in this episode, he felt the most like the Doctor probably in any of his other episodes. So, first of all, I just got to say, like, hats off to Ncuti for this episode. He actually really, really did a good job, and I did genuinely enjoy his acting throughout this episode. And I think that also helps by the fact that I think he was quite well written as the Doctor in this episode as well. Belinda as well. Belinda, a companion that I've not really had many good things to say about yet, because all she can ever do is talk about getting home and complain and moan at every point possible. Like, that's kind of her character so far. But in this episode, I think she did the best job in this episode for as far as her character has gone. And I actually found myself liking her performance in this episode and enjoying the performance in this episode. So again, probs and hats off to Varada Sethu as well for doing a good performance in this episode as well. So yeah, absolutely love that. And then all the other actors, of course, in the episode did a really, really good job. And I did thoroughly enjoy this episode. I also think the music in this episode was very, very good. I like when Doctor Who tweaks the music to the location and time that they're in. And I think it really, really fit the Nigerian style to this episode. Obviously, the Doctor's never really done a full episode where he's just gone out to like Nigeria and done a full episode there. And I think the culture and the lifestyle is really, really well translated into the episode as well. And I think that's, again, something that I always thought Doctor Who used to do very, very well. And again, maybe another factor as to why this episode felt really, really Doctor Who-y. And that is something that has been really, really lacking from the Shooting Outward era so far. So I'm really, really happy to say that I enjoyed this episode, and it felt like Doctor Who. It just felt like an episode of Doctor Who. You could tear Shooting Outward out of that and throw Matt Smith into that episode, and it would work almost exactly the same. So, like, obviously the Doctor would be different and react differently to different things, but ultimately it would still be a good story. And I think you could do the same with Peter Capaldi or any of the other Doctors, in fact. Yeah, so I think it was a good story. I think it was a well-made story. I think it was nicely written as well, which I'm actually quite surprised about, because the writer Anua Ellams, I wasn't too sure about his writing capabilities, because he was mainly writing poems and things like that. When I did some research into the actual writers, you can go ahead and check that video out if you want to. But yeah, basically I did a deep dive into all of the previous work that these writers had done, and it turns out that Anua Ellams hadn't done a lot of... He hasn't done a lot of screenplay stuff. He mainly did, like, I believe, like, theatre work, but mostly poems. And yeah, there is some slight tweaks into this that you could say, oh, these lines are quite poetic, and definitely feel like they were written by somebody like that. But overall, I think he did a pretty good job on this episode, and I'm thoroughly happy with it. I think it was a good episode. So yeah, that was basically my first thoughts on the episode, the story, and yeah, basically, yeah, I think it was a really, really good story, but there were, like, obviously a couple of little bits in it that just didn't add up 100%, but not as many as, like, previous episodes have been, in terms of, like, the story-wise. But yeah, this episode, the story and the engine, I think it was a good episode. I think it was a solid episode. So yeah, that is basically my first thoughts on this episode. If you want to go ahead and check out my previous breakdown and review episodes, they are a bit longer, so obviously go ahead, get some snacks, and watch them as I break down and dive straight into every single episode. I'm breaking down all of the writing in the episodes, and it took an incredibly long time to do, because you're literally going through the episode, pausing it, singling out a point, writing about that point, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that is kind of the outline of these bigger reviews. But yeah, definitely go ahead and check them out if you haven't already, and check out all my other Doctor Who videos on this channel, because I'm making a bunch of Doctor Who content at the moment. So yeah, definitely go and check them Doctor Who videos out. But yeah, that's basically it for this whole video, so thank you guys for watching. The full breakdown and review of this actual episode will be out very, very soon. So yeah, thanks for watching, comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.